We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our three biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Sean Blackburn with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Adam Vasquez. He is the founder and CEO over at Merit. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show. Excited to have you on and excited to speak through our topic today on Market Invention. But before we begin, if you can just tell our listeners a little bit about you, your background, and what it is you guys over at Merit are up to these days.
Cool. So my background is, I've been in the sort of C-suite as a chief marketing officer for a lot of my career. I've been a bit of entrepreneur as well, kind of been all over the world working for Fortune 100 companies and really been inventing billion-dollar markets for these companies for a long time. I got a little bit tired of the corporate grind and realized that I could do a lot more good by helping a lot of other companies and entrepreneurs and startup organizations, and I realized that what we were doing and what I had been doing my entire career with really inventing markets, and the fact that there's this sort of newly discovered law of commerce called market invention, and I know we're going to talk about that. I realized that there was a real opportunity to kind of reinvent marketing and advertising industry from the personal pain I felt as a customer, right, as a client.
Right.
So we founded Merit back in 2015, and it was really from an acquisition of a small B2B agency, and we converted it over to being the leader in market invention. And now clients from all sizes and all industries come to us, big and small, from software and technology to companies like Peeps and Micanites on the consumer side.
Interesting.
To, Redding Truck on the B2B side, with sort of truck bodies, and large banks as well. And what they've come to us for is we realized that marketing and advertising really isn't working for them, as they're usually second, third, or fourth place in their market. And they follow the process to make them number one, or really invent a new sort of product, service, or market opportunity for them if they already are number one, several other companies that we work with, like large connectivity brands.
Love that. Yeah. So it's really cool that you get to see kind of the spread of everything as far as in the B2B landscape. It's certainly something that we see here at the B2B Growth Show. There's a lot of diverse but underserved companies out there with this sort of content. So I'm really excited for the book that you have coming out too, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But maybe if you can just kind of give us the 50,000 foot view. Whenever you say market invention, what is it that you mean by that?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a step back and we talk about how advertising and the internet has changed forever. And I believe no one will argue with it, but what I'm about ready to say may seem so obvious, yet no one realizes this is really what's going on. And I say market invention is a law of commerce because it's really been around since the history of really commerce itself. It's kind of like gravity or bacteria. It's taken us this long to really observe and understand and really codify what is in fact happening. And the internet has really kind of sort of emphasized it. And let me explain. Really in the past, if you were to think about pre-internet, say you were sliced Wonder Bread, right? And you're out there advertising and hitting big brands, and everyone's kind of aware that you're like the only sliced bread available. Because prior to the internet, advertising or salespeople were our only source of information, right?
Right.
And I mean, it seems obvious, right? And so these big brands and these big advertising agencies and everything else, whoever put the most money in advertising and sales and other growth initiatives would really own that market, right? So when we heard Wonder Bread, we thought it was literally the only sliced bread available. So when we went to the store, we went and bought sliced bread, and we're like, okay, I want to buy sliced bread. I want to buy Wonder Bread because it's the only one. And when we saw other alternatives, we didn't even think about it because it was not really from our research, right? And we got our research from word of mouth, salespeople, or advertising. Now, post-internet, everything's changed, right? Now, when we see an advertisement, we click on a social media link, a salesperson calls us, search marketing doesn't really matter. We go out and we do our research. So say you're Wonder Bread and you're advertising sliced bread today, and you're out there. What we do is when we see that ad, we're really creating awareness to a market, no longer a brand, because now what we do is we go out and once we see that ad, we go comparison shopping, right? And we go out and we do a research and everything else. And this goes, I'm using a consumer example, but it is absolutely the same on the business to business side as well.
Certainly.
When you no longer take salespeople from what their word is, what we do is we go out and we do our internet research across, and this is the same with virtually every industry.
Right.
And so now what happens is we end up spending with whoever we perceive as the best option, right, for what we want. And unfortunately, 9 out of 10 times, it's generally the market leader. So really, if you're advertising or promoting or some sales initiative or say account-based marketing, content marketing, whatever, it doesn't, and you're not the market leader, you're actually generating awareness to a market today. And those dollars you're spending are actually going to number one instead of yourself. So you're making the market leader bigger and you're keeping your place in your market because generally speaking, you're being compared to everybody else, right? So that's the reality today. And, the alternative is, so what do you do with that, right? And that's, you have to invent the next version of the market you play in today and be the first one in that market and get everyone to realize the shift needs to happen. And there's multiple ways of doing this, but, and there's no, there's a formula to inventing the market, but what that market will be is, can be anything, right? It's a combination of things, really. So the challenge is now to be number one. If you want to be first in your market, you will never get there with advertising, sales, anything, really, content marketing, social media, PR. It doesn't matter. Any marketing or sales initiative, digital transformation is the same way without inventing a new market and making that the new market that basically becomes the future. And once customers go into that new market, because you attract them to your vision of this new market and the promise of this new market, you also have to have something to sell that has merit, so to speak, of that new market. And once that happens, the old market starts to contract. And then really the market leader, once they start to contract, they start seeing this new market growth because you've kind of invented the new market for your industry. Competitors start to invade it. And what happens is the same thing that was happening to you when you were not number one, right? When you would advertise, the market would expand and number one would get big and you would stay in your place.
Right.
Is the same thing. So when the big guys or gals come in to your market, they start advertising on this market. And if you've done a good job and understand how market invention works and the process, you reap all the benefit because you get to start to scale and get big with the market because your competitors are actually attracting customers to the market, and they find you through their own self-discovery and research, because all roads lead to you if you understand how to manipulate market invention. And so they actually make the market bigger and you with it, and you become number one, and then they become a shadow of their former selves, actually. And
wow.
And there's tons of case studies on this, and we've done this, hundreds of times for brands you probably have never heard of. But if you were looking for that product or service, you realize they're the best and they're number one, and they weren't number one when we started. So
I think it's fascinating overall. The crux of marketing in the past has just been get attention. And I think that it's a really interesting point that you're making about the attention is not going to solve anything anymore whenever in this new kind of era. It's just going to make your competitor, the market leader, more money, get them more customers. So I love the kind of jujitsu that you guys are doing there with taking your clients to a different area for them to play in and then become the leader in. So I love that.
All right, today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing, and we'll be shining the spotlight on Aegis Software, a company that makes software for manufacturing operations. Aegis was one of the first companies in their space to invest in search marketing, but as competition grew, their performance plateaued. To counter this, they hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. With unparalleled experience in inbound lead gen for B2B companies, Directive was able to increase Aegis's monthly online leads by 457%, while at the same time lowering their cost per lead by 147%. Now I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Do you think that this is a newer idea that other agencies and other companies overall are just ill-equipped for?
Yeah, so there's a few challenges. And when you look at the mega trends in general, you look at some of the consolidation that's happening and everyone's focused on the wrong thing. People are focused on like, ooh, we're doing disruption, or, there's one large company that calls themselves a disruption agency. And it's a mistake because disruption is a byproduct of market invention, just like an apple falling from the tree is a byproduct of gravity, right?
Right.
So what happens is, like, a lot of people don't even know this exists. So, and we're having this conversation, and I'm really excited so that, your listeners are awakened to what's really going on. And what happens is when we talk to CEOs and chief marketing officers, you get a couple roles here. So the strategic CEO, once you sit down, and they may come to us, say for like a website, like I need a website, or I need a brand campaign, or I need, a PR, or I need, a new, whatever,
specific project,
marketing projects, right? Well, everybody in the industry has been focused on tactics mostly, right? We do this, we do that. And then when they say they do strategy, it's really not business strategy. It's really kind of just communication strategy, and there's nothing wrong. You need that, but it's not going to change the business, right? So when we go in and we talk to these individuals, and we call this bridging the markets, right? From the old legacy marketing and advertising market to the new market invention market, what happens is very interesting. We explain to them kind of like the conversation we're having now about what's really going on, and the fact that this is the reason why number 2, 3, and 4s, even when they spend billions of dollars in advertising and rebranding and digital transformations, they never changed their leadership role. This is really what's is happening. This force of nature is pushing down on them, and they don't understand why. So when you explain to them what's really going on, the light bulb goes off, and they realize that they've been literally wasting millions of dollars in advertising just to drive awareness and demand for the market leader and not themselves. And so what happens is, and generally there's always an incumbent marketing and advertising agency, right? So, or there's a strategic consulting company in there trying to give strategy, but it's not. They don't even understand. They're flying planes and don't even understand aerodynamics. It's crazy. So once you have this conversation to them and you explain the facts and the charts and all this other stuff that we do, they realize that I'm not ever selling merit, right? I mean, actually using the process of market invention to invent the market invention market, and it's working very well for us. So you can't ignore that. You can't deny its existence, right? And what happens is that aha moment happens for these clients, and they realize, they're like, wow, okay, so where do we sign up with you guys? And oh, by the way, do you guys even want to work with whoever we have as an agency of record? And what we say is like, sure, we can, but they don't understand how market invention works. So they're going to be holding the organization back, because everything you do down to your content marketing needs to change, because it's a different approach, and it's the right approach. You're basically it's like walking and being awake, being aware,
Yeah, it's a
where you were
fundamental
asleep
shift.
before.
Right.
Yeah. And if you think about what has happened in our industry, there really hasn't been, any process change or anything really innovative as far as the way we go to market and how we do things. It's forever since the original product placement price, promotion that we came out, So, and we're really solving business challenges rather than communication challenges. So a lot of times I say, stop advertising, don't advertise. And a lot of media partners freak out when I say that message. And it's not because I don't think advertising works. It's very effective. But if you're not the market leader and you're not doing market invention, then you're wasting your money. 9 out of 10 of your dollars is going to your competitors. So that's not helping you. So instead, what we suggest is use advertising to educate the market during the make the market phase, but only do that when you're inventing a market or defending the market, right?
Right.
Because you're the leader. And reinforcing your leadership position. But that's in the fourth and final stage when you have a lot of competitors invading your space. You have to switch from educating to defending it in many ways. But yes, that's a fundamental shift, right? And that's changing everything. We look at two brands again, these are consumer brands, but again, look at any B2B brands. Also, we can even talk about Salesforce.com to Siebel Systems.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Salesforce.com followed this process. Mark Benioff got it right away. And if you really dig into the case study, and there's a great book called, Behind the Cloud, which is, written by Mark Benioff, behind the scenes look at how he did it. And you map that to the process, you'll realize that whether Mark realized it or not, he actually followed the market invention process and realized that he followed it to the T and put Siebel Systems out of business. Right. And now he has the tallest building in San Francisco. So, and it was uncovering pain that nobody understood existed. And the competitors were creating this pain. And then he solved it. But then he activated a very linear market invention process that worked for him to create this new market in this way we think of. He invented the cloud-based CRM market. Prior to Salesforce.com, Siebel was on-premise software, right? And that's still a bad word, but that was an invented word by Salesforce.com to get people to realize what was wrong with the legacy market. Just like in the new market, he never even sold Salesforce.com. He just sold the promise of the new market, right? And that's the same thing with HubSpot has done too. HubSpot invented inbound marketing. Before HubSpot, inbound marketing didn't exist. And if you buy into inbound marketing, which you should, because it is a very good and solid approach compared to the old ways of outbound marketing, it skyrocketed them and put them on number one, really, marketing automation software in the world, in the past Marketo and Eloqua and all those others out there, and the tactics they did. So again, there's tons of different scenarios. I mean, Boston Beer Company did this as well by inventing the craft beer market. They created the craft beer market, and Sam Adams happened to be, the one you thought of when you thought of craft beer. And now they're $1 billion plus craft brewery, the largest craft beer company in the world. And now they're actually struggling because people think they're a mainstream beer, right? Like not competing with Anheuser-Busch. So, right. And the process is the same across all these areas. And, and I realized in every one of those cases that these entrepreneurs, these businesses, and including myself, because I'm a market inventor myself, and I was just uncovering it through some self-learning. And as I was trying to convert a old business-to-business advertising agency to something else, something new for the market to grow, so we would grow and expand and be number one, I followed this process, and then I started examining it and realized, like, holy moly, this is the actual process. Like, there's no denying it. And this is an unseen force that we've all been fighting against. This is the reason why number one always has like 5 times the revenue and profit than everyone else. There's this big unseen sort of gap, and why nobody can seem to break through number one. And then why is it that these suddenly this quote unquote disruptive companies are able to take the number one spot? Well, if you look at all the similarities, it's it's all this market invention process. So, and the other thing is, some people have asked me, hey, Adam, like, why aren't you like trying to say this is your proprietary process and you're giving it away? Well, I'm giving it away because it can help so many more people. And think about how many different businesses need to understand this that are basically struggling with it and fighting it without realizing that they're fighting ghosts. It's like they don't even know it exists, right? And they think it's their competitors are out positioning them or out branding them or out selling them. And that's not it at all. It's the fact that no matter what they do, no matter how much money they spend, if they just focus on this tactic stuff and they don't understand and embrace this new thing, it's not even new, right? It's existed forever. Then they're screwed, right? So I want to help them. And plus, I also needed it to train my own team, right? Because we're hiring and recruiting business analysts, strategists, marketers, sales, like all parts of the organization. And we need to basically, they don't need to unlearn, but we need to break apart what their skill set is and build it back up under this model so they understand how to use it. So it was for myself, regardless.
All right, that does it today for B2B Growth. Tomorrow, we're going to be continuing our conversation with Adam, where he gets more granular and into his 4-step process for market invention. Until then, thanks for listening.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.